We continue now at the top of Daf Nun Zayin Amud Aleph and Meseches Bava Basra. This is Bava Basra Daf 57a. The Gemara says, Ahu Shtar, there was a document to have a chasim ole beitrei, and there were two witnesses that were signed to the document. Shachiv chad minai, one of the witnesses died. Asa achua dahai dekoi, the brother of the witness that was still alive came. V'chad achrin, and there was one other person that came together with this brother. Liasu de achasim asyade, in order to testify on the signature of the deceased witness. So you had one witness that was still alive, and then the brother of that witness that was still alive, he comes with somebody else to testify about the witness that has died. Achasim asyade, the idach again on the signature of this other witness who had died. Savar Ravina Lamemer, so Ravina thought to say, Hainu Masnisim, that should be identical to the case in our Mishnah where we say that it is good testimony even though you have brothers. What's the case of our Mishnah? You have Gimel Achim, you have three brothers, V'yachad mitztaref iman, and then you have one person who joins them for each year that this person is making the chazakah. Brother number one testifies about the first year with this particular aid. Brother number two with the same aid testifies about the second year. Brother number three testifies with the same aid about the third year. So we don't say over there that it's a problem of brothers testifying because each brother is testifying on a different year. So the same thing should be true over here. You have one brother that's alive, he's one witness. The other brother, he's coming to testify about the signature of the witness that died. That's referring to the other witness. That should not be a problem. Ravina thought it would be the same as our Mishnah. Amar le Ravashi, Ravashi said to him, he said to Ravina, that's not true at all. Midami, can you really compare the two cases? Hasam over there, meaning over there in the situation of a person making a chazak of 3 years, lo nafik nechi riva de memona apuma da'achi. You don't have 3/4 of the money all dependent on the mouth, on the testimony of brothers. Meaning, in every year, so you have a brother testifying about, let's say, year number 1. So he's half the edus on year number 1. On year number 2, you have another brother testifying about year number 2. He's half the edus on year number 2. So on each year, the brothers represent just 1/2. But over here, in this case, over here, nafik nechi riva de mamona, you have 3/4 of the money. Nechi riva means you subtract 1/4, which is the same as 3/4. 3/4 of the money is dependent apuma da'achi on the testimony, on the mouths of the brothers, because what you have over here is 50% is the brother that's still alive that signed the document. That's already 50%. And then the other 50%, that other signature, half of the certification of that signature is coming from a brother. So if you add a half of that 50%, that's adding 25%. It's adding another quarter. That's 75% of the testimony is happening through these two brothers. That's going to be problematic. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Elu devarim sheyesh len chazaka. The following activities can be activities that can create a chazaka. V'elu devarim she'ein lem chazaka. And then the following activities, there are activities that cannot create a chazaka. And the Mishnah now explains, Hayamaymid behema b'chotzer. Let's say a person is standing up an animal in a courtyard. Tanur, rechayim, v'kirayim, or let's say he's putting an oven there, or a millstone, or a stove. Umegadal tarnagolim, or he's raising chickens. V'nosein zivlo b'chotzer, he's putting the fertilizer in the courtyard. All of these activities ain't a chazaka. They're not considered a chazaka. What we're discussing over here is the chezkas gimel shanim. If a person would do these things for 3 years, that would not create the chezkas gimel shanim, the 3-year chazaka, which would create that he has a presumption of being the owner. But let's say the person constructs a partition for the animal, and the partition is 10 tvachim high. He makes some kind of partition for the oven, or the stove, or the millstone. Or let's say he brings the chickens into the house. Or he makes a place for the fertilizer. It's 3 tvachim deep. It's 3 tvachim high. That would be considered a chazaka. And the Gemara says, what's the difference between the cases in the beginning of the Mishnah, where we say that they do not establish a chazaka, and the cases in the Seifa, the end of the Mishnah, where we say that does establish a chazaka? And the Gemara answers, Amar Ula says, Kol she'ilu b'nichsei hager kana, any action which you do, which if it would be the property of a convert, meaning it would be ownerless property, that would create a kinyan for you to become the owner of that property. So b'nichsei chaveru kana, so also if you do it in the property of his friend, that can also establish the chazaka, meaning like the chazaka of 3 years, that makes the presumption that this is the owner. And the contrast is also true. If the activity is not going to create a kinyan in the property of the convert, in the ownerless property, so it's also not going to create the kinyan, it's not going to create the chazaka in the property of his friend. But the Gemara continues, Maskif lo Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes asks on this, is this really true? Uchlolahu, is this really a rule? V'harei nir, but let's say, what about plowing? T'v'nichse hager kana. For example, if it's an ownerless property, the property of a convert, if you plow that property, it creates a kinyan, you become the owner. But b'nichse chaver lo kana, but if it's the property of his friend to create the 3-year chazaka, that would not create the 3-year chazaka. V'harei achilas peiros, and we can look at another case. Let's say the consumption of the fruits. A person is harvesting the fruits of the property. T'v'nichse chaver kana, in the property of his friend, that is a kinyan, meaning that is a good chazaka. B'nichse hager lo kana, but in the property of the convert, it's not a good kinyan. And so that's not really a rule. That cannot be what is the distinguishing principle in the Mishnah that says what is a chazaka and what is not. And so the Gemara says, Ella rather, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba bar Avua. Rav Nachman says that Rabba bar Avua says, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Nun Zayin Amud Beis.